Yeah, just to let you know, we will be recording tonight and sending that back out so you can share around. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Maybe some more will trickle in. Welcome, happy Earth Week. Hopefully, you're doing something fun this week. Get outside. I'm Trapper Fowler. I'm your Habitat Connectivity Program Director here at Wild Virginia. Tonight, we're lucky enough to have Beth Mizell with Shenandoah National Park Trust with us talking about their initiatives to help protect, enhance, and preserve the resources of the park. Beth is the Good Neighbors Program Manager for Shenandoah National Park Trust, and we'll discuss how their efforts include connecting the park to larger regional conservation efforts and priorities, which is vital to the movement of our wildlife and connectivity. Um, First, we probably want to take care of some housekeeping items. Again, this meeting, this webinar will be recorded. We do that so we can send it back out to you afterwards, and those that aren't able to join can view it at their leisure. Remember to enter your name and maybe where you're joining from tonight in the chat. Appreciate learning who all is joining this evening. And as far as questions go, try to locate those in the Q&A box, not the chat. It's okay if some end up over there. We'll try to find them. And, of course, towards the end of the presentation, we'll try to field as many of those as questions as we can. While Virginia's intern, Julian, will be helping with that. Don't be shy about putting questions in. We can all learn from each other's questions. So we appreciate that participation. And again, once you get the email link with the recording, feel free to share that around with colleagues and friends and family. In addition to our habitat connectivity program that I manage here at Wild Virginia, we also have our water quality program. I'm sure many of you are familiar with. That's led by Mr. David Sly. So please be sure to tune in to some of those program events and advocacy engagement opportunities that are upcoming. I want to thank, again, Julian, our intern, for helping field the questions at the end. Want to thank Kylie for joining us and keeping us straight and keeping us on track and everything running smooth in the background tonight. So we appreciate them. Please note that Wild Virginia can't do this important work without you. We get our energy from you all, and that's the energy to keep pushing for connectivity and wildlife habitat and crossings, our policy work, and our water quality protection. So please consider supporting Wild Virginia in any way you can, whether that's through donating or just helping to advocate. Everybody has a role to play. And we appreciate your support. So, without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker this evening, Beth Mizell, the Good Neighbors Program Manager at Shenandoah National Park Trust. Beth has spent her entire career in the conservation realm, starting as an interpretive naturalist in her home state of Indiana while studying at DePaul University. Prior to moving to Virginia in 2016 and starting a small native plant consulting business, Beth was a land steward with the Nature Conservancy for over 14 years, caring for natural areas and restoring rare natural communities in Northwest Florida and Indiana. Most recently, Beth served as executive director for Blue Ridge Prism, helping to grow the organization from a project of the trust to a well-respected leader in Virginia's conservation community. Beth has extensive experience in natural areas management and restoration, invasive plant species management and control, native plant propagation, building partnerships to meet conservation challenges, and gardening landscaping with native plants. When she's not thinking about conservation and land management, she looks for caterpillars in her native gardens enjoys knitting, reading, birding, and spending time visiting national parks with her husband, Pete. So we are very excited to have Beth with us. Here is some general contact information for us over at Wild Virginia, should you need it. And with that, we will switch over to Beth's screen. Beth, feel free to share your slides and we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Let's see. Give me just a second to get started here. And am I muted? I can't, can you hear me or not?
I can hear you
There we
just fine,
go.
Beth.
Okay. I couldn't see my toolbar, so I didn't know where it went. Okay. Thank you for your patience. It's been a little bit since I've used Zoom, and it's been a little bit since I've given a public-facing presentation like this. So I'm glad to be back in the game. And let me just go ahead and start the slideshow here, and we'll get started. So there we are. Is everything okay? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Trapper, for that lovely introduction and the invitation to speak at this evening's webinar for Wild Virginia. Wild Virginia is one of our conservation partners in the region, and we're interested in corridors too. And I'll touch a little bit on that in the presentation and the context of the park and the landscape. So, as Trapper said, I'm Beth Mizell, and I'm the Good Neighbors Program Manager for the Shenandoah National Park Trust. I went to the trust 2 years ago with an exciting opportunity to build a whole new program for the Shenandoah National Park Trust. So this evening, I'll give you a little bit of an overview. I'm going to give you a brief introduction of the trust and who we are, what we do. We're going to talk more about Shenandoah National Park's place in the landscape, culturally, ecologically, and economically. And then I'll provide an overview of the Trust Good Neighbors program, which I manage, and then some quick tips on how you can be a great park neighbor. And everybody is a neighbor for Shenandoah National Park. You don't have to live right next to the park to be a park neighbor. So, about the Shenandoah National Park Trust, who we are a friends organization to Shenandoah National Park. We were established in 2004 as a project of the National Park Service, excuse me, the National Park Foundation, and that is the congressionally chartered charity of the National Park Service. So we started with two bequests from that were earmarked to support Shenandoah National Park, and that served as seed funding to launch the Shenandoah National Park Trust within the National Park Foundation. In 2007, the trust established itself as an independent nonprofit organization, and next year we are uh, coming up on 20 years in supporting Shenandoah National Park. So we envision an inspired and engaged community of stakeholders. It's really about community coming together to care for and protect a landscape that we all love and from which we benefit in that Shenandoah National Park. And the trust, our mission is to protect strategic investments in programs and initiatives that help protect, enhance, and preserve the resources of Shenandoah National Park for all to enjoy for this and future generations. So we're not just talking about today, we're looking ahead and we want to make sure the park and this landscape is around for 50 years, 100 years, the next 250 years of this country. Um, and we are the official philanthropic partner of Shenandoah National Park. So, a little bit more about the friends, what it means to be a friend. So, friends, organizations like Shenandoah National Park offer a way for all of us to care for our national treasures. In many ways, running a national park like Shenandoah is like running a small city. And visitors often do not experience the behind the scenes work that's critical and that keeps Shenandoah ecologically healthy and also a premier outdoor experience. So, adequate and sustained funding is paramount to protecting our national parks and magnificent places across the country. However, congressional funding for national parks has declined dramatically, about 20% over the last decade. So the trust, not trucks, the trust, we work beyond the limitations of federal appropriations to invest in those high quality, high priority initiatives that will produce the greatest benefit for Shenandoah National Park. And just a little bit more about how partnerships and philanthropy has been so important for the national park system. Since 1915, these partnerships have been around, and the trust is again one of over 450 different friends groups. Most national parks have a friends group, and so it's really about effective fundraising and public engagement. And these are critical to protecting national parks and inspiring long-term stewardship. And there's a bunch of text on this slide, and I'm not going to read it. Um, so let's see. Move on to the next slide. So caring for Shenandoah National Park is not only our mission, it is our passion. I work with 11 other staff at Shenandoah National Park Trust, and I can tell you each of them, they are passionate about Shenandoah National Park and they're passionate about the outdoors. And some of our staff, they come from very different backgrounds. I'm the person that has a conservation background, but we're all fundraisers and we all bring a different skill set and we're all passionate about Shenandoah National Park. So our work as an organization is organized around four pillars that I'll walk through. But all of these directly support Shenandoah National Park to engage the public, provide recreational activities, invest in the park's history, mentor the next generation, and honor people who lived and worked in the park and their rich history. If you want to learn more about all of the different projects and programs that we're supporting in and out of Shenandoah National Park, you can navigate to our website. I put the link on the slide, and check out our 2026 field guide. And it's a beautiful document. It has lots of great photos and it highlights every way we are supporting Shenandoah National Park in 2026. So our pillars are wild Shenandoah, and that's where my work falls under. And it's really about keeping Shenandoah wild, and the natural resources piece of Shenandoah, the conservation piece. Um, Experience Shenandoah is all about the visitor experience, supporting public engagement and meaningful visitor experiences. Stewards of Shenandoah, this is where we're cultivating that next generation of park stewards and conservationists through programs like through access to the outdoors, which helps to support different groups to get into the park. We try to take down barriers that might be preventing folks from getting into the park. We also have a great program that's firing up for 2026, and it's our Trailblazers program. And that is a group of high school kids, and they are working on the Rivanna Trail here in Charlottesville. And after they get field hardened and used to working outside, they get to go spend a few days in the park. So it's a really cool program to begin to cultivate that love and passion and interest in a career in conservation or being an advocate for conservation. And then lastly is Stories of Shenandoah, and that's really where we're focusing on the cultural piece, honoring all the people that lived and worked in Shenandoah and sharing their stories. There's so many stories out there, and it has such a rich history. So I just want to talk a little bit, highlight a little bit more about the programs that we're supporting this year in the park. I just want to kick off like we excel, like the trust, we excel at supporting Shenandoah National Park beyond what federal appropriations provide. And for 2026, we are sending $1.4 million to Shenandoah National Park. Um, Total since we started in 2007 is over $7 million. So it's probably like $8.5 million all said and done. Just to highlight some of our projects, we support the Shenandoah Youth Conservation Corps. We support invasive species control, and those are the little beetles that help control the invasive pest on the hemlock, the woolly adelgid pest on the hemlocks. We funded that program to save trees in the park. Bear boxes. Our goal is to get a bear box at every campsite in the park, and those are about $2,000 a pop. And then we've had some great volunteer opportunities in the park to help install those bear boxes. But again, they keep Shenandoah wild and keep wild bears wild and not depending on humans for food. A few other things that we're working on this year. We're about to wrap up an exciting restoration of Boulder Cabin. This is at Skyland in Shenandoah National Park. This cabin predates the park, and it has gone a complete overhaul. And this summer, it should be finished, and the park. We will use that to support our artist in residence program. So it'll be a functioning space for folks to live in that are doing work in the park. So we also help with maintaining overlooks. Shenandoah National Park has Skyline Drive going through the heart of the park from north to south, and people come to that park for the view. Some people don't leave Skyline Drive. That is their park experience. And so having these overlooks open to see the landscape, it's an important part of that experience. And then we also transfer land to the park. We last year we sent 233 acres to Shenandoah National Park. That was in trust ownership. We help facilitate the acquisition and donation of that to Shenandoah National Park. That's in Warren County. And then we have a lot of other things. We have a lot of forest health projects, a really exciting trail restoration project at Dark Hollow Falls. And then we also have two positions that the trust supports, and they are embedded in Shenandoah National Park. And one of the positions is the Indigenous Cultural Landscapes Fellow. And then we also have a youth outreach coordinator that works in the education shop. So lots of cool things happening in the park. Um, but so that's who the trust is. And now I want to start to kind of shift our conversation and talk more about why Shenandoah National Park is significant in the landscape. Ecologically, geographically, culturally, and economically and recreationally. So I'm going to show you some statistics because we all need statistics. The park is 200,000 acres, roughly. 24 million people are within a 4-hour drive of Shenandoah National Park. That's a lot of people. And the visitation shows. There are 300 miles of shared boundary with private lands. And then 9 counties touch Shenandoah National Park. And also 40% of the park is a designated wilderness. So I want to just ground us in the landscape. So Shenandoah is a long and skinny park, as you can see in the map, and it's almost 200,000 acres or stretched 105 miles in length. And as I mentioned, there are 300 plus miles of border that's mostly shared with over 2,000 individual parcels that are in private ownership. So to really frame the rest of the presentation, it's important to understand how Shenandoah National Park fits and functions in the landscape. And so I'm gonna show this. You've probably seen this as a supporter of Wild Virginia. I'm sure you've seen this slide before, something like this slide that features the corridors that have been identified here in Virginia. So remember, nature knows no boundary, and I will say that a few more times in this presentation. And that's really the spirit of the Good Neighbors program. But Shenandoah National Park connects the landscape and anchors regional conservation work. The park is a significant feature in the landscape as a corridor, allowing the movement and migration of plants and animals across the landscape. So, from north to south along the mountains, up to down from along elevation and contour lines. And that will be really important as we see the impacts of climate change and a warming landscape, and animals will be moving higher elevations to adapt. And then, rather than thinking of the park and the Blue Ridge Mountains as a feature that separates, I like to think of it as a feature that connects the Piedmont and the Shenandoah Valley. And it's really a backbone that provides a strong ecological framework for all of our conservation work in the region. We are in a globally significant landscape here in Virginia. Um, and I just wanted to get back to the map a little bit here, and these are the wildlife biodiversity resilience corridors, and these are comprised of high quality habitats that support native biodiversity and are ranked by priority. And you can see that where the red arrow is pointing is Shenandoah, and that's ranked as a main corridor. That's the highest designation, and it is also surrounded by buffering lands and waters. So the again, Shenandoah is an anchor and it's a connector. So, um, kind of going, taking it a step further, we know that Shenandoah is an important anchor and a connected, but what really makes this landscape so special, and what makes Shenandoah National Park so special? The park is 95% of the park is forested, and it's home to all of these plants and animals that you see on this slide. There are over 1,400 vascular plants documented in the park, and 62 of those are state listed rare plants, and 8 are globally listed rare plant species. There are 30 different types of native plant communities, 53 species of mammals, 38 species of fish, including Brooks trout, 26 species of reptiles, 24 species of amphibians, including the Shenandoah salamander, which is in the upper left corner of your screen, this little cute guy. Um, and then over 200 species of birds. And not to mention that Shenandoah National Park and the Blue Ridge Mountains is a critical flyway and habitat for migratory birds. And the park also has 90 streams. All these really cool statistics are on the Park Service website for Shenandoah National Park. And I also wanted to shout out the Shenandoah National Park has an awesome Flickr page, and that's where all of these photos came from. They're beautiful, beautiful photos. So, I mean, so the this is home for these animals. It's ecologically rich, and Shenandoah National Park and the landscape is home for every single living being that you are seeing on the screen. So Shenandoah is not only habitat in wild spaces. These mountains, where the park is, these mountains are still home for many, many people. And the history of Shenandoah National Park is really a story of displacement. Indigenous communities were pushed out by removal and disease upon European colonization. In the early 20s and 30s, mountain communities and at least 500 families were removed to form the park. And despite this legacy of removal, the families of our ancestors who traveled, lived in, worked this land, celebrated it, honored it, and loved it, they still make up the vibrant communities surrounding the park today. The park is the homeland of the Monacan Indian Nation. And I want to just highlight how the Trust Indigenous Initiative supports collaborative research and education to fully recognize Indigenous peoples' deep and ongoing relationship with the lands now known as Shenandoah National Park. An Indigenous cultural landscape is a is a landscape understood through Indigenous perspectives, and it's shaped by Indigenous knowledge, systems, values, and enduring relationships with the land. So I'm not here to tell the Monacan story. but they have a wonderful history on their web page, and I put some links here for you to explore on your own later. And also on the Shenandoah National Park Trust website, we have a nice overview of that goes a little bit more in depth about the Indigenous initiative that we're supporting. Um, and then I want to also talk about still in the park, there are over 100 family cemeteries, and they're still active, and people still visit and remember and honor their families. And there are chimneys and farmsteads that mark a living history in the park. And the Blue Ridge Heritage Project has established memorial chimneys to honor those people who lost their homes when the park was formed. So the park is still home. So what else does 200,000 acres of forest do for us? It gives us a quality of life and provides a sense of place. We have an amazing quality of life in this region, and the 200,000 acres of forest really provide and sustains our life quite literally. And we may really think of the park as a backdrop or to our life. You know, you see the mountains in the distance, or it's someplace to go to be in nature. But the reality is, the Shenandoah National Park is part of our everyday life, from the piece of just simply looking at the mountains to the clean drinking water that's coming out of our tap. Um, so the park offers so much for our communities here, not just visitors coming in from far away, but for our community here all around the park. There's recreation and access to the outdoors, hiking, fishing, camping, outdoor adventures, all in our backyard. We have clean water, and my case in point is the Sugar Hollow Reservoir in Albemarle County that supplies the city of Charlottesville's water. That literally comes from Shenandoah National Park, as the headwaters there. Um, we get clean air. All those trees, it removes carbon from the atmosphere. And then we also have a robust and ag tourism surrounding the park, and those industries benefit from open spaces and stunning views. The working lands along the park boundary are really important to maintaining to rural character of our landscape, of our home, and then also are important buffers for wild places in Shenandoah National Park. So, excuse me just a second. So, if you were lucky enough to live within the sight distance of Shenandoah National Park, of those mountains, I ask you to take a moment to consider why you live there and how the landscape impacts your well-being. And I like to share like my personal thought. I moved here because my husband lived here in Charlottesville, where we're still living today. But as after 10 years of being here, I have come to understand how much the Blue Ridge Mountains and Shenandoah National Park, they really ground me in a sense of place and geologic time. And that gives me a lot of comfort and peace. And sometimes that's really hard today to find in today's world. So I've learned to not take these lands and waters for granted. Um, my chosen home. And I grew up in Indiana, and it was really flat. So that I really, really do enjoy the mountains. They do bring me a great deal of comfort. All right. So, and what else does a 200,000 acre forest do for us? Well, it is also an economic powerhouse. So, Shenandoah does not only protect the beautiful mountains, breathtaking views, and iconic wildlife, it is an economic powerhouse for the region and the gateway communities. So, in 2024, there were 1.7 million park visitors to Shenandoah National Park, and they spent an estimated $132 million in the local gateway communities while visiting the park. And this supported 1,180 jobs, $61.9 million in labor income, $113 million in value added, and $175 million in economic output, all to the local gateway communities surrounding the park. So why do people visit this park? As I mentioned earlier, they come here for the views. A lot of people do. They don't leave Skyline Drive. So protecting the lands and waters outside of the park means protecting the viewshed too. And so, with all of the things that Shenandoah National Park and this landscape offer us, there are a lot of stresses on the landscape, particularly around changes in land use. It stresses the lands and water around the park and the park too. So, land's turning over all around the park boundary, and at a time of high development pressure, given the park's proximity to Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, and Charlottesville. I mean, who wouldn't want to live here? It's beautiful, as we just explored together. So, and I also mentioned that over 2,000 individual parcels touch the park boundary in 8 counties. Those are the counties that I work in. It's technically 9, but I work in 8. So we have smaller and smaller parcels. That means more carved up lands and residences around the boundary and fewer intact large forested blocks. More houses and more development mean less healthy forests and waters, habitat, if you will, outside of the park boundary. So, in addition to the land tr use changes, we also are contending with invasive species, which I know a lot about. We're contending with changing and extreme weather patterns, um, drought or severe storms. We have light pollution. All these things stress what makes the park so special. All those, the forests, the wildlife, the streams, access to the outdoors, the view sheds, the dark skies. So, positive working relationships with park neighbors are really critical to address these mutual concerns. And this task can be a little daunting when there are thousands of park neighbors and 300 plus miles of park boundary. So, the Shenandoah National Park Trust, we really have a unique role to play in this space. And again, remember, nature knows no boundary. And to truly protect the park and all it offers to us, we have to look beyond the park boundary. And a healthy Shenandoah National Park in 30, 40, 50 years, 250 years, and beyond is dependent upon preserving the health of the surrounding land, forest, and waters. And conversely, the surrounding landscape depends on the health of the park's forests and streams. So this brings us to the more specifically to my program, the Good Neighbors program, which is it's land conservation through community. The trust and the Good Neighbors, we play a unique role in regional conservation by working within the public-private intersection, those areas along the park border. We do this because we have an established and trusted relationship with our park partner. We're able to bring new capacity to engaging with park neighbors and communities. And we also have added capacity for the park to engage with regional conservation organizations and regional conservation work. So, recognizing the unique role the trust could play in the landscape and to further our mission of protecting strategic park resources, the Good Neighbors program was launched just over 2 years ago. So, the program is still relatively new, and we're still building this program. So, through the Good Neighbors program, we are cultivating positive working relationships between the park and the park neighbors and our conservation partners to protect the landscapes we all love. And not only are we focused on how borderland neighbors can be good neighbors, but also how the park can be a good neighbor too. Goes both ways. All right. So, just a quick, this slide explains kind of the how the Good Neighbors program is organized, but I want to start off with saying like all of our actions at the Shenandoah National Park Trust, we're driven by the priorities of the park, and we support the park's conservation, visitor, and cultural management objectives. So we have 3 focal areas that make up the Good Neighbors program. The first is land protection, and that is focused on protecting the Shenandoah National Park borderlands. And then we also are helping to bridge the gap, connecting the priorities of Shenandoah National Park to regional conservation work. And the third piece of this of the program, or the third leg of the stool, is about community engagement and really engaging with park neighbors in meaningful ways to build communities of conservation around the park. So I've got one slide to illustrate each point, but I want to talk about protecting lands and access. Um, so we protect strategic parcels in the borderlands around the park to protect watersheds, public access, rare species, natural communities, open space, view sheds, dark skies, etc. We protect what's essential, not everything. We work only with willing landowners voluntarily, and our goal is low land donation, but we do work to purchase land, and then we also work with our land trust partners for conservation easements. These are also important tools. There is a federal limitation that we're dealing with, and the enabling legislation of the park prohibits the use of federal funds to acquire land for the park. So right now, everything that the park is getting is through donation, which is a challenge that we have right now, and we're always looking for innovative ways to help protect land along the park boundary. So working with our partners is very important. And then our successes in lands, um, we are really a bridge to Shenandoah National Park because it can take a lot for a private individual to donate their land or sell their land to a federal entity. So we can be a bridge to that and hold the land for as long as we need to before and helping to steward that into park ownership. So we've transferred over 1,200 acres to the park so far. And our lands work, we have impacted over 1,800 acres. So that's through partner assistance or land purchase or donations of land. So the other way that the other piece of the Good Neighbors program is really beyond protecting individual parcels along the park boundary. We are investing in the conservation of the landscape surrounding Shenandoah National Park. Again, looking beyond that park boundary. And so in collaboration with our partner, the National Parks Conservation Association, we're leading the formation of a landscape conservation initiative. Um, Landscape conservation is about building a collective conversation and actions on how we wish to shape our relationship with the land that we live on today and for future generations. So earlier we touched on the ecological importance of Shenandoah National Park. It's also its cultural significance and economic importance to the park's gateway communities. So, landscape conservation brings all of these priorities together under one vision to protect the larger conservation landscape, this place that we call home. This initiative will also seek to ensure the park's priorities are reflected in regional conservation priorities. The Good Neighbors program brings the additional capacity needed to support these conversations between the park and regional conservation partners. So, this initiative, we're in a 2-year capacity building phase that has been supported by a grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation's Chesapeake Bay or Chesapeake Wild Award. So, we're just beginning to build this landscape conservation framework with a core group of partners who actively work along the park's boundary. So the third piece of the Good Neighbors program is community engagement, and so we've had some great community partners that I've been able to get to know over the past 2 years, and really start to dig in and understand like what's important in a local in a park community, and who are those community champions or advocates. So I just want to give a quick shout out to three partners that we've gotten to work with so far that are really embedded in their community. Graves Mill Farms in Madison County, Ducard Vineyards also in Madison County, and then the Browntown Community Center Association in Warren County. And we've been just the wonderful partners and have had some really successful outreach events. But what does community engagement look like? So we're really connecting neighbors, park neighbors, to conservation resources to increase conservation actions on the borderlands. So think about reforestation, invasives management, riparian buffers, agricultural cost share programs. And then we're also identifying, building, and supporting community-led conservation efforts. So community engagement is creating a space for folks to come together around conservation. We're not there to tell the park neighbors what they should do. We're there to support them with expertise, resources to help make decisions that are right for them and their community. And this is about connecting neighbors and supporting community-led initiatives. Sometimes it's simply creating space because we're working in some of these rural communities and the neighbors don't might not know each other very well. And because there's nowhere to gather. And so we've been able to create really uh, informal conservation open house style events where people can drop in, have a snack, have a glass of wine, talk to different technical service providers, and just it's a real social opportunity as well. So, with our partners, the Good Neighbors program has hosted three community engagement events. I mentioned the conservation open houses, and we also recently did a dark sky neighborhood gathering, and that was very cool. And people were very excited to participate in that and learn more about supporting dark skies. So, what does success around community engagement look like? It's early, but so far, success is neighbors meeting for the first time to discover, hey, we are neighbors. And I have literally seen two people together looking at a map and figuring out that they were next door neighbors. So that was really cool to see those meaningful connections made. The informal format supports longer conversations and more personal interactions with technical service providers. Um, Success is site visits and meetings scheduled with conservation partners for tree plantings, forest management, fencing projects, conservation easements, you name it. Um, Success is neighbors raising their hands to do more. They want to become community advocates for conservation in their backyard. And then success is also understanding community concerns and interests. What topics resonate with them? Uh, how can we further engage with them? What are folks interested in? And in that listening, putting on that listening hat, that is the beginning of a deeper relationship. And it opens the door to building and supporting those communities. And all this takes time, careful observation, and the most important thing is listening. All important for mutual trust. And I like to say that conservation is really about people and it's about relationships. And this is where we can come together and bring people together, build relationships, and build conservation. So, um, with all of that said, that's the Good Neighbors program. And now I want to share some tips with you about how to be a great park neighbor. But before I really dive into that, I think it's important to recognize that we are all doing the best we can with the resources that we have on hand. And if you cannot or not doing these things, it doesn't mean you're a bad neighbor. So again, we're all just doing the best we can. But if you are interested in learning more about any of the things that I share this evening, please get in touch with me. My contact information will be on the final slide to talk about what you can do. And remember, every action, no matter how seemingly small, it can make a big difference. It can mean if you put one native shrub in, that makes a big difference for the little family of chickadees that might live on your property. Or if you change out a light bulb from a bright white light bulb to a yellow, warm colored light bulb. It will make a difference for the nighttime creatures and moths, for example. So little changes, little actions can make a big difference. So let's talk about how to be a great park neighbor. So yes, you want to be a great park neighbor. So here's some things you can do. Controlling invasive plants to the best of your ability on your land, especially if you live near the park, but wherever you are in Virginia. And if you have to make choices about which invasive plants to start, think about protecting your forest and focusing on trees strangling invasive vines. This protects the mature trees, and we're really interested in protecting that forest canopy around Shenandoah National Park. So the next thing you can do is protect dark skies. And if you visit Dark Sky International, there are a million wonderful resources about lighting, styles of lighting, light bulbs, and even how resources on how to start a conversation with your neighbor that might have that really bright, obnoxious floodlight that's shining through your front window. So keep outdoor lighting useful. Keep it targeted, keep it at a low level, controlled, so meaning like a motion sensor, and warm colored. And so again, it can be as simple as replacing a light bulb. And then choose native plants. And some of you, I saw some familiar names on the attendees this evening, and so particular like how important native plants are, and I've worked in that space for a while, and also the invasive plant space. But choosing a native plant can make a big difference because you're not bringing in a new invasive species to completely take over your property or spill over into your neighbor's property or into high valued natural areas. So don't plant a calorie pear, plant a native dogwood or red bud, uh, and yeah, choose native plants. And if there are Virginia native plant campaigns all over the state, and there's a great website, and I can't remember the website, but if you Google or search Virginia native plant campaigns, you will find that website. And there's a lot of great resources there. All right, we're coming close to the end. So another way you can help be a great park neighbor is to keep streams clean and cold. And especially for brook trout. Brook trout need clean streams and they need cold streams. So how can you do this? Fence out livestock if you can. You can plant riparian buffers. There are a lot of great programs for replanting through the Friends of the Rappahannock, through the Virginia Department of Forestry, and some of our other conservation partners. So there's a lot of opportunities to plant trees along waterways. And then also protect those mature trees along your waterways. Again, control those invasive vines. Avoid, don't cut them down, things like that. I also want to make a plug for sustainable forest management. So forest management begins with a forest management plan, and you can talk to your regional forester at the Virginia Department of Forestry to get started. If you're thinking about harvesting timber, talk to your local Department of Forestry forester or hire a professional forestry consultant to make sure that your timber is harvested sustainably, that best management practices are used, so your forest can recover and also to grow into the grow and be healthy. So I've seen a lot of bad, bad forest timber harvest, and I've seen a lot of good ones. So it can be done responsibly and for the long-term benefit of the forest. So the Department of Forestry, they have the expertise. They have a lot of cost share programs. They have the Hardwood Initiative to promote a healthy hardwood forest, oak forest. So go to the Virginia Department of Forestry website to find your local forester. And then you can also help be a good, great neighbor by protecting trail access. So many trails that go in and out of the park, they are originating outside of the park. And there are trailheads that cross private property. And that can be problematic for some of our park neighbors because of people that are disrespectful of parking areas, disrespectful of private lands, or maybe they just don't know. But if you have a trailhead, on your property. And if you're having issues, please reach out to me or let the park folks know. And let's try to troubleshoot that together before you throw up a gate and shut down public access. Um, so let's see. And then lastly, to be a great park neighbor, I'm going to ask you to be an advocate for conservation and for Shenandoah National Park. So that can look like different things, but contact your federal, state, and local representatives, your board of supervisors, your city, if you live in town, if you have a, city council, um, your senators and House of Representatives, especially for Shenandoah National Park, our federal representatives, and let them know that conservation matters to you. Let them know that supporting funding for Shenandoah National Park, let them know that that matters to you and that's important. Um, be a community advocate. Who do you know in your neighborhood? Learn about what is important to you, what's important to your neighbors. Talk to your neighbors, maybe host a gathering. And really, conservation is about people, it's about relationships. Create that physical space to connect with one another and learn. And I'm happy to talk with any of you more about that. If you're interested in learning more about how to talk to people in your community. Um, so be a community advocate, talk to your neighbors, and give Shenandoah National Park um, some love. You can support the trust or your favorite local conservation organization. I love that we have the license plates. All right. And then if you want to be a great neighbor and if you are able, consider protecting your land through a conservation easement or donation. Think about what you want to have happen to your land when you're not using it anymore. Does your family want to continue to care for it? Or, you have control of what can happen to that land in the future. Um, so consider protecting your property through, we accept simple donations of land, fee simple donations, but if you're interested in a conservation easement, we can help connect you to our trusted land trust partners that work in your community. So the trust, we do accept bequests of land. We accept direct donations of land. We will consider bargain sales of land. So there are certain tax benefits for all of those things. And then we also are happy to talk about trail access easements or agreements about trail access. Um, so I will, and just to, why donate land to the park? Well, it becomes protected in perpetuity, and you're leaving a legacy for your children and grandchildren and future generations to enjoy. You can enjoy recognition from the gift or not. And then, as I mentioned earlier, transferring land to Shenandoah National Park or the National Park Service or a federal entity can be a multi-year endeavor. So the trust, we can take it in a much shorter period of time and steward it into park ownership while you enjoy the benefits of donation now. And in addition to protecting your land in perpetuity, leaving a conservation legacy, there are certain tax benefits that are available to people who choose to do that. And then I want to also remind folks, you might not be a next door neighbor, but we're all park neighbors. And but you can also be a park visitor too, a great park visitor too. So make sure you park in designated areas, stay on the trail, pack out your trash, respect the park rules, observe wildlife from a distance. Don't pick up that box turtle, leave that salamander alone, stay away from the bear. Leave flowers and plants undisturbed. Don't pick the wildflowers. Don't dig up ginseng. Advocate for Shenandoah. Call your local officials. Let them know the park is important to you. Thank a ranger when you see him. They work really hard and it's tough. It's a tough job. And it's a job that they're all passionate about. And a thank you means a lot. And then lastly, make a gift. You can make a gift to the trust to support Shenandoah National Park, or make a gift to your favorite conservation organization. And with that, I will wrap up the presentation. Here's my contact information here. You can email me or call me. I encourage you to visit the park's website, and I'm happy to take a few questions until we run out of time. So thank you all.
We'll turn it over to Julian to field any questions.
For now, it doesn't really look like we have many questions in the chat, but I'm encouraging you guys, please send them in if you do have any, and I'll get on that right away.
And while we're waiting, Beth, I don't know if you saw in the chat, someone's joining all the way from the UK.
I did see
Um,
that. Yeah.
wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that
I
was
googled.
Polly. Thank you,
Yeah,
Polly.
do you know each other?
No, I don't.
Oh,
No, I don't think we do. But
I
uh,
uh, I
that's cool.
googled Derbyshire Peak District, and it appears that it's related to a national park in England, which I thought was interesting.
That's really cool. So
Yeah.
I hope it's not too late for you there. I think the UK is 5 hours ahead. So thanks for hanging in there with us, Polly.
Yeah, and I'll fire away a couple questions as maybe some others get theirs together. Beth, I know you said that a lot of folks enjoy the park from their vehicles, so they may just stay on Skyline, maybe hit overlooks as they come by. Do you know, is there any stats on those folks that choose to hike, how far they're actually willing to hike away from Skyline Drive? I know in some of my past jobs, there's been some stats about use of trails, and a lot of folks,
Mm.
don't get further than a half mile, much less a mile away from the main trail, or in this case, Skyline Drive. I didn't know if you knew anything about usage.
I don't. I know that when I've been on trails in the park, I see little like counting stations they have. So they're tracking that in certain places, but I don't know what those stats are or how, if they're public or not. So,
If I got another one, I got several. I thought of some good
yay.
questions while you were talking. I appreciated the information. So since I take it you spend a lot of time at Shenandoah. Um, if you had to pick another park, you couldn't pick Shenandoah. What's your second choice? Just curious.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm embarrassed to say I don't spend as much time in the park as you might think I do. I actually spend most of my time outside of the park looking at the park. And then in my own personal time when I'm recreating, it's somewhere with less people. Um, so, gosh, I think my favorite state park here in Virginia is is it Tunnel State Park? It's like in Southwest Virginia way, Natural Tunnel State Park or something like that. That's a really cool place. My favorite national park is probably Great Basin National Park. It is beautiful. And I mean, I've never seen so many stars in my whole life there. So,
Uh, that's awesome. I haven't been to either one of those. Very unfamiliar with both. Still getting my feet up under me in Virginia.
mhm.
So yeah, I have some exploring to do. Definitely wrote down the tunnel part. Um, so with the night skies, Shenandoah is not designated as a Dark Sky Monument. Is that what they're called?
Dark Sky Park. I think that's what they're
Dark
called.
Sky Park.
Yeah.
But obviously you get some really good looks at the night sky with that picture of the Milky Way. So is there better times to try to visit the park to get those views? I'm guessing when it's not a full moon would be a good place to start. I've made that
Yeah,
mistake before.
probably when it's not a full moon. I know that that they do a lot of dark sky programs at Big Meadows in the park, and I believe beginning in May, I think it's May 8th, the Charlottesville Astronomy Society, they do programs up there for the public, and they actually came to our dark sky event a few weeks ago, and they set up these amazing telescopes, and we looked at the Horsehead Nebula in Orion, which was really cool, and things like that. So, and they have them on like iPads and their laptops. You're not looking through a little peephole. So a large group of people can see what's happening in real time, what that scope is pointed at. So that'll start up in May. And they have that information. The Charlottesville Astronomy Society has that on their website, I think. Um, yeah, and yeah, clear night. Yeah, that's the best place in the park, probably.
So
So we do have some
looks like we
questions coming
good.
in.
Yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
yeah, one from Emily Byers, asking how can local counties that surround the park align their lighting policies to help the Dark Skies Initiative?
Oh, Emily, I think you know more about that than I do, probably. Yeah, I don't think I know enough about each county's policy to be able to answer that accurately. But I'm going to take a stab at the different regulations around public lighting and making sure that lighting is warm in color, downward facing. So think street lights or lights in public parks and things like that. And then for new housing developments, um, giving guidance on the types of lights that are appropriate with new construction.
And another question from Brian and Jenny
Mhm.
asking, are there any electric hookup campsites in the park, or are there plans for any?
I have no idea. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what the park's plans are around that. So I would suggest that you go to the Shenandoah National Park website and look at they have a section on visiting the park. I would suggest that you check that resource.
That's a good segue into as part of our follow-ups, sending out the link to this recording so that folks can review or send it on to friends and family, coworkers. Beth, we do like to ask the speakers to share any pertinent links or messaging. So if you can think of anything, I definitely wrote down a lot because you shared a lot of
Okay.
some of the resources and links that you mentioned, but feel free to pass those on so that we can share them out, and including the one you just mentioned, maybe just the general park website that we can point folks to as they make plans to visit this wonderful park, which I have had the pleasure, and it's a beautiful place, and look forward to going back. I was had the pleasure of viewing it from Reddish Knob last Friday, so I kind of got a west view from a very high peak in Virginia that I was not familiar with. And it was just really cool to see the park from that side because I'm used to seeing it from the east side. So
Mhm.
just a different perspective. Um, but with that, I know we're up on time and I want to be respectful Beth's time. And Beth, again, we greatly appreciate you joining us tonight. A lot of good information shared, and hopefully we can have you back in the future to discuss more. So appreciate everybody's time. Big thanks to Julian and Kylie too. Thanks for joining Wild Virginia tonight and Shenandoah National Park Trust. I hope you all have a good evening. Stay warm, and let's stay connected. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.